If you haven't yet viewed the last video, part 82, I suggest you do that before viewing this one. It'll give you a more complete picture of the Reed family that lived in this home right here on Military Street. There have been many important men in Port Huron over the centuries, but no one, I don't believe, has had a book written about them, a biography or autobiography of their lives that went into the detail or as much substance as we find in this book, The Salvager, by Mary Frances Donner. And we've been reading excerpts out of this book and looking into their lives, and today we'll continue on with our story where we left off in our last video. If you recall, in our last video, the engineer on the tugboat Mentor refused to go down and fix the boiler. It was just too dangerous, and of course Tom went down to save the day. But that meant now they had to get a new engineer. And because of that fact, Tom met the love of his life. And when it comes to love stories, we don't want to miss anything, so let's read it together. When the Mentor reached Bay City with the raft, Engineer Evans quit his job, and the tug was idled until the post could be filled. Skilled men were scarce. After following several leads unsuccessfully, Jim Reed heard of a likely prospect who lived down the shore and sent Tom to investigate. In a clearing at the edge of the woods, Tom paused at the sound of hoofs coming along a path through the trees. Soon a girl came riding into view on a bay mare. She was autumn come to life, brown hair, gold scarf, tawny jacket and rippling skirt. Self-assured, she sat erect, reins in firm hands. Her face had warmth and beauty. Her eyes were clean and proud. She appraised him in passing and went along through the trees. He smiled, moved toward her. She was gone. But that would not be for long. This miraculously was the one he had been waiting for. His original search became an excuse to question the prospective engineer presently as to the identity of the girl on horseback. "Well, that sounds like Dr. Human's girl, Anna," the man told him. "See her often out riding through the woods." Anna Human's parents had died, and she was living with her sister and brother-in-law, who was an attorney. Tom figured out some small legal matter that he had to have taken care of, and so he went to see him at his house to talk it over, and of course he met Anna, and they struck up a friendship. And as this friendship developed, her sister became very concerned. She thought Tom was very uncouth. Here's what she says. After his first visit to the Winslow home, "He's an absolute giant," Clara Winslow remarked. "Handsome and a wonderful smile. But his verbs are dreadful, dreadful." Involuntarily, Anna found herself coming to Tom's defense. Anna the purist. "Sailors have a language of their own." "My dear, a verb is a verb in any language," Clara reminded her. "I will take character. You recognize that in a man you know only slightly?" "I think I do." Having declared herself, she defended him against Clara's disapproval, telling herself that upsetting Clara's assurance was the only reason. Then, as time went on and his attentions continued, she had to admit the truth. She was falling in love. As a frequent caller at the Winslow home, Tom was reminded of the difference in their lives, for the place contained much of what once embellished the old family home. The Humans had lived gently. The appointments here reflected a cultural background. Books, fine rugs, objects of art, handsome pieces of rosewood and mahogany, silver, flowing brocade, and velvet drapes. It was here that Anna and her younger sister had been brought to live with her older married sister at the death of their parents. The affair progressed. It was no secret that they had arranged a signal between them so that Anna would know when Tom's tug was coming into port. Of course, all vessels had to blow for the opening of the bridge so that they could pass through. But Tom had a special salute for Anna. He would add an extra long blast, which wherever she was could not fail to reach her. If she happened to be at home, she flew to her room to prepare herself for his coming. Yet when he appeared, Secretly she would deplore his careless appearance, comparing his grooming with that of the handsome young bank clerk in love with her younger sister. And yet he was Tom. Facetiousness had no defense against his smile and kiss. "Why wouldn't you go to school, Tom?" she wondered sadly. "Why didn't your people make you go?" He could not expect this sheltered girl to understand his kind of life. "Oh, Anna," he begged, "don't talk about such things now. I love you, and I'll make you happy. We will love each other, and you know it." Pleading his cause that night, he swung back and forth across his sister's parlor, his great frame rolling as if the sea were still under him, bursting into excited declarations of love and hopes and plans. "Tom," she was dismayed at the intensity of her emotion, anxious for some defense against it, "do you know what a verb is?" Halting, he faced her with a frown. "I know what the lakes are, from one end to the other. I've rafted since I could hold a pike pole. I've taken over the wheel of a tug in seas ready to swamp us. I've run a locomotive and handled tote teams and driven stage. How the hell does a verb stand up against that?" "It isn't even in the running," she admitted, smiling through tears she ignored. "I'm afraid you win." "And now," he roared, snatching her to her feet, "name the day. I've waited as long as I intend to." "It wasn't my idea," she admitted. "What are you laughing about then? Are you serious?" he demanded. "It's too late for you to back out now," she warned. "Next week?" he begged, stilling the laughter. "Next week, Tom." "It's about time," he declared. "We've been going together for 3 years." Tom went to inform his father of their upcoming marriage like a bashful child. His response was, "You've got a hell of a nerve asking a girl to marry you and not a cent to your name, nor a master's license yet. Marriage is more than billing and cooing. There's bills to pay. Who's going to foot them? On the pay you earn, you can hardly take care of yourself." "I'll need more pay," Tom agreed bluntly. "Huh, you will, huh? Well, you'll get none till you got a master's license to hang in the tug pilot house, and that's only the beginning." Tom met the challenge, bitterly determining that he would keep his part of the bargain and demand a raise accordingly. A fellow 23 years old should assert himself. Hard study followed, every available moment devoted to maritime law and rules. Then came the examination, days of suspense, and the final award. The wedding was planned. Such joy, it seemed, could not be his, and then a sickening blow fell. Clara Winslow's sudden death put an end to dreams. Anna's inconsolable grief must be considered, and the period of mourning respected. Anna could not think of marriage for at least a year. Tom and Anna were finally married. Tom was now 24 years old. Tom was ordered to take command of the tug Mockingbird, which had urgent business north along Ontario's Lake Superior shore. Grudgingly, the father agreed that Anna might go along. Anna was a good sailor. In those glamorous days, it mattered little to either where they were as long as they were together. Upbound, Tom took her ashore at the Sioux while the tug locked through. In evidence among numerous groups of spectators watching the boats were several Indians. Anna remarked nervously at the intensity of the stare of a towering redskin. "Can you blame him?" laughed the happy bridegroom. But when the Mockingbird locked through on her return trip, Tom was formally accosted by the same fellow, who proved to be a chief of note on the neighboring reservation. And in exchange for Anna, who, he declared, was the most desirable woman he had ever seen, he had brought 6 young squaws to give Tom. Not sharing in Anna's amusement, Tom handled the situation briefly and effectively. 2 years had passed since that incident. Tom and Anna had bought a run-down home and took in boarders who were lumbermen. But Tom was away a lot, and when he came home for the birth of his son, Tom, which was spelled Thom, he entered the door and it was filled with smoke coming out from the loggers. There was cursing going on. They had no respect for the home at all, and Tom threw every one of them out the door. When Anna found out, she says, "There's no way we can afford it without them," and Tom says, "You just wait and see." As weeks passed, Jim Reed found that he had a different individual to deal with in Tom's new estate as father. 2 years had done something to Tom, 2 years of hard tempering. Corrigan McKinney Company of Cleveland had offered him a job. Considering it, he gave his father an ultimatum. Unless the salary demand was met, Jim Reed could find himself another assistant. Jim Reed cursed mildly and met the terms. He had anticipated this, but held out as long as possible. That was his way of doing business, and his way usually worked, but not always. In this photograph here, you can see the Reed tug pulling a raft of logs down the St. Clair River. And in the background, you can see the Port Huron side. You can see the waterworks there with the chimney alongside it. And then to the right of that looks like might be the Omar Conger ferry boat. The Reeds owned lumber mills in Bay City and also Alpena. They also had ties with the Trenton Mill south of Detroit and owned by Edmund Hall. And they processed the logs from Hall's vast Canadian timber interests. This was a source of steady income for the Reeds, who had secured a good contract. Then unexpectedly, the Canadian government passed a law forbidding the rafting of logs to the United States for processing. This was a blow to the very heart of the Reed Company, which was running many millions of feet of Canadian logs a year. Jim Reed wrestled with the problem and decided to move to Sarnia, Ontario, and to carry on his business from that base under the name of Reed Wrecking and Towing Company of Sarnia. At this time, for $25,000, he bought the Dunford-Alverson dry dock across the river in Port Huron, Michigan, from a lumber dealer named Haynes, who had taken over the mortgage for that amount. This had never proven a paying investment because of what seemed to be the dock's irremediable faults. Sand working out from under the gates made it impossible to empty the dock satisfactorily. James Reed studied the situation and ordered an excavation on the side of the gate. He pumped out all the sand. After diver Dave Seagrave sank a pipe, the space was filled with concrete and the fault rectified. There was no further leakage, and the Reed Company from then on used the dry dock to repair ships. The new Reed dry dock sat right behind the John Howard Lumber Company at the mouth of the Black River, just to the north of the lumber company. And as we zoom in here, you can see the dry dock slip. The dry dock was like a locks. In the earlier pictures we saw where the water was pumped out. Here, the water is level with the St. Clair River. And today, it would have been right about here, where the red lines are. Tom and Anna's son Tom was a boy of 2, and another daughter, Clara, had arrived when Tom, now 30 years old, moved his family from Bay City to Port Huron. Port Huron, too, had its handsome thoroughfare skirting the St. Clair River, broad tree-lined Military Street. Anna had no social ambitions. She wanted the good life for her family, a sound house and a wholesome if less important section, and that was found, bought, and sacrificed for. Luxuries could wait. The foundation of an educational fund must be laid, and no nonsense about it. To Anna, the basic values came first. I had a hard time finding where that first home that they had was in Port Huron, but I finally located it. It was at 138 4th Street, which wasn't very far from the dry dock at all. You could just walk over there to work, and that's where they also parked their tugs. Quite convenient. The home couldn't have been much at that location for that time period. That was about 1901, 1902. But by 1906, they would be living in this house. We'll see how that transpired in our next video, and we'll see some of the exciting adventures that Tom went on in the salvaging business, and we'll see the Reed children growing up. Please join me then.